All right, welcome. Oh, I have to admit everyone. Okay. Welcome everyone to our May webinar. We have a small but intimate group here. And just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us. We're very excited to continue with our webinar series. Just a note, we are recording this and streaming it live on Facebook. So the webinar will be on YouTube later, and you will all get a link to that. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am Special Projects Manager at 1000 Friends of Wisconsin. I'll be hosting us today. I'm going to share my screen to get the presentation underway. So our topic for today is active summer community support for outdoor recreation. We do have a CM credit available for AICP if anybody's looking for that. And I'm happy to welcome our presenters. First, I will thank our sponsor, Godfrey & Kahn, for helping sponsor our webinar series. And I also want to thank the partner organizations that lent us their people for today. So UW La Crosse, the Ice Age Trail Alliance, and Wisconsin Bike Federation. So quick background on who we are. 1000 Friends of Wisconsin is a land use planning organization. We've been around since 1996 when we were founded to help pass smart growth legislation in the state. And ever since then, we've been advancing healthy communities and environmental preservation through good land use planning. One of our programs is Active Wisconsin. That is the program that I'm responsible for running. And we are a coalition of communities and advocacy groups from all around the state working to implement active transportation infrastructure in their cities and towns. So that's walking, biking, and transit where applicable. And we do that by sharing resources and networking and advocating at the state level for good policy related to all good things transportation. You can follow us on social media. You can see our handles at the bottom of the screen. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But the best way to keep up with what we are doing is through our e-news. You can sign up for 1000 Friends e-news on the website. You can also sign up for Active Wisconsin e-news. We send a long newsletter every month and shorter updates when things come up. So we try not to overload you with information. So that is the best way to find out about upcoming webinars. I don't have a specific one to announce yet for summer, but you will be hearing about that soon. So keep your eyes open and peeled for that. A few updates about what we've been up to lately. There was a great article in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel about an update on the Stadium Freeway, which is Wisconsin 175 in Milwaukee. A portion of our Fix It 6 proposal for I-94 is starting to be under consideration from the WISDOT, from the Department of Transportation. They announced that they would study replacing the Stadium Freeway with a boulevard. So this would reconnect neighborhoods that were historically severed by that highway and would add walking, biking, and transit possibilities instead of dividing the neighborhood like before. So this is a big deal for us and for our allies with the Coalition of More Responsible Transportation. We also have the support of the state rep who represents that area, Evan Goyke. So that is exciting news. And Greg is going to put a link to the article in the chat if you should want to read that. As far as Active Wisconsin goes, that is the program that I run, as I mentioned, and I really love a good field trip. So last week I was given the opportunity to go up to Stevens Point and attend an all-day workshop with Gil Penalosa, who founded 880 Cities. You can visit their website to learn more about the work they do, but he is a specialist in placemaking in parks for cities and towns of all sizes. So we heard a lot from him. And then we took a walking tour of the downtown and were able to see a lot of the art they have there in Stevens Point. So they've got trash cans that they paint that they call a trash canvas, which is a great play on words that I always love. They had some fantastic murals. My favorite one was this one on the bottom left of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they've got sculptures, including this umbrella man, a light pole that looks like an umbrella man in the Riverside Park, among many, many other examples. So that was a really fun and inspiring way to spend the day. And it was thanks to AARP Wisconsin that I was able to go and was invited. So we're just going to move right into our presenters for today. As I mentioned, our topic is Active Summer, Community Support for Outdoor Recreation. So I would encourage all of you to think about what we think of outdoor recreation. We have so many opportunities in Wisconsin, especially with recreational trails, which will be the focus for today. And I think a lot of us tend to get an image in our minds of what an outdoor person is, like what it means to be outdoorsy. And what we're going to hear from our presenters today is really hopefully going to expand that notion and help us think about ways that outdoor recreation really should be accessible to people of all ages and all abilities in many communities around the state. So we're going to hear about that. And we're also going to hear about how the recreational trails and systems that we have here in Wisconsin and the communities they intersect with are really mutually beneficial. So you'll hear about how communities can support outdoor recreation and how it works vice versa, how they benefit from having these networks and systems close by. So if you all would please mute your microphone. Unless you are presenting, you can turn off your camera, so that's less distracting. And if you have questions for our presenters, please put them in the chat. We will gather them and make sure we get those all answered at the end. So our first presenter is James Longhurst. He is a bicycle historian and professor at UW-La Crosse. He has written 2 books, including Bike Battles and Citizen Environmentalists. He is also on the board of directors for 1,000 Friends. He does a lot of things as a volunteer, including serving on the Committee on Transit and Active Transportation in La Crosse. And he was named the Bike Fed Advocate of the Year in 2016. So, and he's going to set the stage for us here. So take it away, James.
Susan, thank you very much. And I'll be asking you to advance to my cover slide there. And I'll say that we're starting with an image of the greatest gateway drug of advocacy, the neighborhood ice cream ride. And I think this is a good image to capture the theory of action that I'm going to return to later in this discussion. I really have 3 inspirations today for what I want to say. First, I'm here as someone who has led a lot of different kinds of bike rides, and we can get the next slide. I've organized a bunch of Ride with the Mayor, a neighborhood association rides, road and gravel rides, my classrooms and other classes we take out into the community, and 10 years of organizing the Labor Day Bike Fest with history tours, road and social rides here. But I don't think that makes me special. There's actually lots of people who organize and lead rides. And so many of people, even in this call, have more experience than I do. So I can say there's 2 other inspirations. We can have the next slide. In the last year, I have really been inspired by some presentations I've heard from Marley Blonsky of All Bodies on Bikes. And it's really changed the way I think about purposefully inviting new participants in to the experience of outdoor recreation, to freedom of movement within the city, and as a gateway to volunteering and advocacy. There's a lot of other people doing this similar work, but Blonsky's been really inspiring to me this last year. And I think that there's a theory of change or a logic model that applies to advocacy and organizing work, that if we want change, if we want sustainable and healthy cities and infrastructure and the ability to recreate for all, we need to intentionally invite and recruit new participants all the time in order to get new volunteers and advocates into a community and eventually into the machine of these organizing and advocacy groups down the road. How groups sustain themselves over time really requires fresh blood coming in continuously. And you do that intentionally by inviting as wide a swath of humanity in as you can. And my third inspiration, I'll take the next slide. I'm a historian of urban and environmental policy, and I've recently been working in bicycle history. And there's a lot of good history written by enthusiasts and scholars alike. There haven't been a lot of historians who take bicycles seriously. Like most Americans, historians think of the bicycle as a toy. Among those that do, however, there is a theme, and I can show the next slide. There's a strong trend in scholarly history, so in academic history in universities and journals and textbooks and those sort of things, for the last 40 or 50 years to do history from the bottom up. We call it social history. And so it's history of the people and not just of the leadership or of elites. And one thing you do when you're a scholarly historian, or a social historian, you think about who's included and who's excluded in the activity. And I'll take the next slide. Scholarly history of bicycling has noted that since the era of the high wheel in the 1870s, so the high wheel is the original, the bone shaker, the penny farthing, the ordinary. And the high wheel was incredibly dangerous. It was really just for young men and sort of daredevil young men. And it's not until the 1890s, the advent of the safety bicycle that you see here, that it's even possible for women to participate. But both in the 1870s and the 1890s, cycling culture can be understood as who is encouraged to engage in cycling and who is excluded. In fact, even now women can ride the safety bicycle, they're actively disparaged and discouraged from doing so. And the high status, upwardly mobile groups discouraged immigrant populations from participating. The most famous example of this, of course, the League of American Wheelmen votes to segregate itself in 1894, so draws the color line in the midst of rising racial segregation nationwide. And I'll take the next slide. I like this image. These are high status women in Rochester, New York. They're wearing particular cycling clothing with trimmed with fur, and they're enjoying themselves. They're having a great time, and this is quite likely very freeing for them. But also this elite status of cycling served to educate the public to oppose spending money on bicycle infrastructure or oppose special laws or legal protections. So in the present, I believe that to build successful movements, outdoor and active transportation advocates must invite in a broad and diverse population, or risk as being branded as other, not being part of the public mainstream, undeserving of support. So what does this mean outside of history books in practical everyday work? It means being very purposeful in messaging and imagery and in opportunity and offering places to latch on for new people. I'll take the next slide. And this includes, so in messaging, reaching out to interested but completely new populations, sort of breaking out of existing networks and advertising to people who might not have any other contact with socially. And to give those people encouragement that this is a thing that's for them, it's not for others, it's for them as well, means very clearly giving specific lengths or estimated times, providing maps for bike rides to make it clear that it's something that they could do, and explaining the outer boundaries. For neighborhood rides, talking to kids and families, you might say, no training wheels or no strider bikes or no children under age of 4. Or you might phrase it more positively and say, all ages welcome, but adults must be able to transport kid and kid's bike in case of meltdown, right? So that leaves everybody in. Providing links for the routes and for the maps ahead of time with printouts to hand out as the ride begins really reassures people about the length and the challenge. And this is a great opportunity to put the name of advocacy organization to people's hands to give them a call to action to join a group mailing list or those sorts of things. And I would suggest for any groups, even ones that are competitive or high skill rides, make intentional set aside for recruitment rides. Create safe routes to school rides before the semester starts, when in the summer evenings, adults can actually have time to scout out the routes, right? So you do the same thing for a competitive group ride, is say, well, we're gonna ride the route together slowly as a test ride, and then later you can join the larger group. This is where we talk about using names or imagery that invites people by not disinviting them or unintentionally discouraging them from participating. And this has to do with names a lot, naming the event or the group or the ride something that is not frightening. I'll tell a story here from La Crosse. We had a group Facebook post, a public Facebook that was for people to post announcements for rides. And it was originally named Ride or Die La Crosse, which sort of captures this excitement and gritty street quality. And it also is terrifying. If you're just thinking of, boy, I've gotten a new bike and I'd like to ride around the city, ride or die is not what you want. And there was a great internal debate here. I was not involved in, but I was watching people sort of work their way through, changing from the inspiration of Ride or Die to what eventually became La Crosse Rides Community Hub. And these are small scale versions of other fights that we've had, like over Unbound Gravel. Names that emphasize extremes or are just downright offensive aren't going to grow community. And then choosing widely representative imagery or rotating imagery to include all bodies or ages or groups, so people can see their own likeness. This is also where we might dispense with some of the jargon. ABC rides for road or ride. It's not helpful. It's also implied hierarchy. We can say like Challenger, Cruiser, Easy, and people will say, oh, I want the Easy, right? And making start points or making expected locations, meet at the usual spot is never going to invite anyone in at all. And when we get to the day of actually doing the rides, thinking about designated ride leaders or road captains. I like to call them Julie the cruise director. If you remember the Love Boat, Julie the cruise director always has a clipboard and is constantly explaining to people, this is where we're going, this is where we're starting, these are the expectations, and then reintroducing people as many times as possible. For social rides and neighborhood rides, as many sweepers as possible. These are people who ride at the back, and they're going to stay with anyone who gets a mechanical or who gets tired. And so if you have a whole bunch of them, you can split off a sweeper so that nobody ever gets left behind. Day of the ride, when everybody gets started, reintroducing yourself and the sweepers all the time reassures everyone. And then starting with a safety briefing. League of American Bicyclists calls it the ABC quick check: air, brakes, chain, quick release, and then just go around on your bike just a little bit and make certain everything works right. And then giving a safety briefing includes saying what we're going to do on the road. The road captain should be at the front, controlling pace and calling out obstacles, pothole, slowing, stopping, right-hand turn, and making certain that people go through intersections. And this really reassures, particularly as those messages get passed down a group of 25 to 50. It means that people are not going to be intimidated when they get to it. And after the ride, intentional community building means choosing to offer inscribed invitations. You're going to be cheerful and not overbearing, tell them a good ride, and then say, here's what we're doing next. Oh, by the way, we're having a trail building day next Saturday. You look like you had a lot of fun. Why don't you join us there? Some minor technical issues. I'd say that the greatest way to offer maps to people is the simplest way. Can I see some of the next slides? So the next slide has, this is Google Maps. Google Maps, My Maps has been deprecated a little bit. You can still use it, and it's the easiest thing to use. And particularly for in-town directions, it puts something in people's hands really quickly. I'll take the next slide. And so you can see the next step up is Ride with GPS. Ride with GPS is a site I recommend. Even at its free settings, you can see you can get elevation information and turn-by-turn directions. You can pay to get the turn-by-turn directions on your cell phone, so it reads it out to you on your cell phone or Garmin. But even if you don't do that, you can print out cue sheets that will tell people where each turn would be. And so you can plan out rides, share them ahead of time, and then also give them to them physically. And I think one more slide shows the Ride with GPS. Yeah, so this is a cue sheet that shows each of the turns. So on our final slide here, I'll say that I've said what I very much like about, recommend about how to invite people in from the experience of riding. But I know there's a lot of experienced people here as well. So I think that we should share at the end of today's meeting, we should share your suggestions, perhaps in the chat. What makes for an inviting experience, name of an event, how to describe an event, and how do you invite new people in to your experience so that they eventually become volunteers, advocates, and part of your organization. Thank you very much, and we'll move on to our next presenter.
Thank you so much, James. As a reminder, you can put your answers to his question or your own questions in the chat. I discovered that my slides freeze when I try to look at the chat. So hopefully Greg's keeping an eye on that, and I will see it at the end. Our next presenter is Amy Lord from the Ice Age Trail Alliance. She is the Outreach and Education Manager there. She promotes the trail to a broad audience, leads the Trail Tessa events for women, leads youth education programs, spearheads the Mammoth Hike Challenge, and oversees the Ice Age Community Initiative, which I know you're going to hear some more about that today. And she's also going to share some really good information about community and volunteer support for the trail. So take it away, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me to come and share today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about, how we can have audiences engage with the Ice Age National Scenic Trail. We have this very, very strong volunteer base, but we're always talking about, what we do, why we do it, and then how we do it. So hopefully I'll be able to share some hints and tips and just some of the things we do and, spark some ideas for those of you listening today. So next slide, please. Real quick, I definitely want to make sure people are familiar or know about the Ice Age National Scenic Trail. It is a 1,000-mile footpath. It is entirely in Wisconsin, and it traces the glacial features that are here because of the most recent ice age, the Wisconsin glaciation that happened, give or take 20,000 years ago. So James did an awesome job talking about the biking recreation. The Ice Age Trail is primarily a footpath. So we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit more about the feet. But so many things that he talked about definitely resonate with what we do and what we try to do when we're engaging our volunteers and our supporters. Became a National Scenic Trail in 1980. It is actually an act of Congress to become a National Scenic Trail. Next slide will show the other National Scenic Trails. We have 11 National Scenic Trails currently. Wisconsin has 2, the Ice Age Trail and then also the North Country National Scenic Trail. So think scenic, the beauty, the nature. Everyone has a unique story. Everyone is a little different, but they're all long distance. And primarily they're all continuous. Ice Age is very unique. We are still building the trail. So of we said 1,000-mile footpath, we have just about 700 miles complete and marked And when we're finished, we're going to have around 1,150 miles. So we've still got about 500 miles to go. So that actually is one of the things that we, embrace and really have passion for with a lot of our volunteers. I am with the Ice Age Trail Alliance. So next slide, please. We are the nonprofit partner. There are 3 main organizations that administer the trail: the National Park Service, the Wisconsin DNR, and then the Ice Age Trail Alliance. We work with hundreds of partners, communities, local government, private businesses, private landowners. But, the 3, National Park Service, the DNR, and then the Alliance, they're kind of the main administrators. So as the nonprofit partner, we're kind of the boots on the ground. Our mission is to conserve, to create. We're still building it. We need to maintain it. And then we also want to promote it. As James mentioned, new audiences, embracing the trail, becoming familiar with it. So that really is our core mission. And we do lots of different things to do that. We had an amazing, I'm sure like many of you guys, when COVID and the pandemic happened and things shut down, we had an amazing reaction in terms of we could say that the trail was still open. And so many people got out and either first just discovered the trail, or really they were just able to embrace it and take advantage of it. Because for a lot, it's very close, or it's a short drive. So our membership is about 5,500. And so a lot of volunteers, a lot of boots on the ground. My next slide will show some photos of what we do. We're building the trail, we're maintaining the trail. We are also a land trust, so we're doing some habitat restoration. A lot of our projects, some things we can't control. A lot of our projects are where the trail is either located or going to be located. So some of the things we talk about, how do we get folks there? So the next slide will have some before and afters. So Susan, you'll have to click through. So there's our before photo and there's our after photo. And when you have volunteers doing this and they can like immediately see the work and what they're doing and how it's going to impact someone's hiking experience, it's a pretty amazing thing. And so when we're doing these trail building projects, we're always talking about safety. We're talking about working at your speed. Again, as James mentioned, making introductions multiple times, not using jargon, not using acronyms. How do we welcome new people into the trail building process? We have volunteers leading these smaller crew leaders. So we're always working with them to make sure they're, making those introductions, talking about the safety, breaking it down. Like, we're all new to, even if you're experienced, we're all going over this together. So we all are on the same page. Susan, I think I have another before and after photo. So it's just the pride. I think the pride and the motivation for the helping hands to, take literally just, nothing and then turn it into this rock wall. And if you've never, just to be a part of that is pretty amazing. On the next slide, I just wanted to show, we do have a very, land management. So yeah, we're talking about habitat restoration. And so we do a lot of work with school groups, and we're able to partner with the schools to bring students out. A lot of these projects are in the fall and or winter, but where again, we have volunteers and some staff on hand to work with students and talk about safety, talk about the goals of the project. And then those kids can see like the before and the after, and what they did and how it impacts the hiker experience. It is pretty amazing. I just put in a real quick slide for next is just what volunteers mean to the Ice Age Trail Alliance. I did not put 2020 in there, but 2021, over 63,000 volunteer hours. That is a pretty good drop from 2019, but large group of dedicated volunteers. And I will say, volunteering is not an obligation of membership. We have people from all over Wisconsin, even the upper Midwest. And I think one of the things that makes it unique is we have a lot of different opportunities. I talked about trail building and maintenance, but in a slide ahead, there's a lot of ways people can volunteer and people can get involved. So our local chapters, they are within the area, within the community. And so, if a scout group wants to get involved, again, a school group, a church group, or even just a resident, we get them in touch with our local chapter. And then that's where they can really find out more about what is a good fit for them. Not everybody wants to swing a tool. Not everybody wants to do administrative help. It really depends on the want of, who's asking. So we're working to match those things up. On my next slides where we talk a little bit more about our chapters, trail maintenance, land stewardship, leading a hike, doing a meetup, having a social, marketing and promotion. We're not all about playing in the mud, although that's really fun. Opportunity to bring folks together and share their experience, share what they like about the trail, where they've hiked, share their photos. It's just, I think it's a very unique thing that they're so, it's so personal for everyone, and everyone has a different story. And so just to create that space where they can share that story is really important. So we're always looking at, doing a good job at not assuming people know the trail, know where it's located, know why it's a national scenic trail. So we're always, we want to make sure we're always trying to make that introduction, answer those questions, and, just so people feel welcome and, feel like they can ask the question and not, not be judged with it, which is a little bit with the next slide. We do a lot of training. It's not easy, but we do a lot of training for volunteers, for hikers. We've started really utilizing the virtual platform, just like this Zoom, where, it's an opportunity to put out topics just like this one today. And, what is the need? What are we hearing from our volunteers? What kind of things are we hearing from hikers? And then create and plan and prep a training around that. Again, our local chapters are huge. Our staff is fairly big. I think we're up to 17 staff members now, but with over 5,000 members, that's a huge network of people, and everybody knows a little something different. So, getting our local chapters involved and making sure they feel comfortable. And like I said, every person has a little different niche and a little different expertise. So, making sure they're able to share that information. We have a very engaged social media audience. This was something we saw in 2020 when the pandemic came upon us. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure our Facebook increased by like 50%. We have a couple different groups that are very, it sounds dumb, but very social. Opportunity for people to ask questions, share photos, talk about what they've experienced. It really is a great way for people to meet without meeting in person. And then when they do get to meet in person, it's just even better because they feel like they've known these folks forever, but it's only been like through one of our social media channels. So very engaged audience. And then we have a robust library of hiker resources. This did not happen overnight. We've been working on this for many, many years, but James talked about how do you get them a map? That's really important if you're talking about a 1,200-mile trail. Like, where do you go? What does that look like? So we have an online map right on our website, completely free, that people can use and look at and zoom in and zoom out. We have an atlas. We have a guidebook. We have a data book. We have an app, the Ice Age Trail. I shouldn't say we, it's not our app, but there is an app about the Ice Age National Scenic Trail. That's going to be our virtual training tonight. We're going to do a kind of more of a deep dive with that for folks. So just, again, a really great library of hiker resources. So those that are out using the trail and experience it can offer feedback. They can share their likes about it, or maybe some tips for, the next time. So we've really taken that information and we keep making those resources better and better because of feedback from hikers. A program we just started back in 2015 is our Ice Age Trail community. Susan, that'll be the next slide. So this was a program we started to really, show economic impact. The Ice Age Trail goes through communities on purpose. Some of the other national scenic trails are very remote, very much quote unquote wilderness. When they were laying out the corridor of the Ice Age National Scenic Trail, it on purpose went through communities. And so I just love that because it's so Wisconsin. We want to talk about the communities and their personalities and their characteristics and their residents. And so our trail community program really highlights each community. It's a living and breathing partnership. Every one of these communities is a little different. So that means the partnership is a little different, but our mission is to create, to support the trail and then also support each community. So we're always looking to maybe host events. We're looking to help promote these communities. We're looking at, larger projects where we can support the local businesses. Our Mammoth Hike Challenge that we started back in 2020 was the result of a Travel Wisconsin grant. And we purposely said part of that challenge is visit these trail communities, support these communities. We didn't really care how you did it, but we wanted folks out exploring the trail, but then also exploring these communities. And again, it was an amazing response. The third one will be happening this October, so we're super happy that we're able to continue it. But we're working with the municipal staff, city administrator, Parks and Rec, local volunteers, local community groups, just to promote the trail and then also, promote the community. So Rib Lake is brand new. They're not even on our map yet, but we just got Rib Lake on board, and we've got a couple more on deck. So it's awesome to see our trail community list keep growing. We are also, like I said earlier, we have a very engaged social media audience. So we have some easy ways for people to be in the know. So next slide, please. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think Susan mentioned earlier about their newsletter. We're kind of in the same boat, where I think the newsletter is the best way to get information. You can sign up right on our website. We send out a monthly electronic newsletter that's just jam-packed of what's going on, where it's going on, and then how to get involved. We also have a calendar on our website, and this is kind of an ongoing thing. We're really working hard to get the calendar up to date. That'll be the next slide. With a lot of local chapters, sometimes it's difficult to get all the information, but you know, we're always looking to get that event on the website, on the calendar, as much detail as you possibly can. You know, James gave awesome tips about, you know, making those events accessible and appealing. Same thing for us, you know, what's it called? Where's it at? How long is it? Difficulty? Those are all really, really good things to think about when you're planning it, you know, because that matters. You know, your messaging and the imagery, really, really important when you're talking about engaging with audiences, and what to expect, you know, sharing that expectation in the description. I will give a shout out to a couple events we have coming up that will be on the next slide. We have a trail building event actually that starts tomorrow. I think it starts today, but it is this weekend. So we're headed up to Rib Lake, our newest Ice Age trail community. So we're really excited to be headed up there to build new trail. It's going to be a multi-year project. And so we're looking at, you know, if we can get supplies in Rib Lake. I know we're going to be hitting a couple of the restaurants to feed people. So again, creating that economic impact and supporting those communities that are supporting the trail. We have constant stewardship and maintenance projects. That's kind of like year round. So, you know, looking at where they're at and when they're at and how we message them. We do a lot of weekly walks and guided hikes. So depending on the audience, depending on their you know, their want, great opportunity for new folks that are maybe a little intimidated and going out on their own. We put them in touch with those weekly walks and those guided hike leaders to say, come along, come find us. We'll make sure you don't get lost. You know, we want to make sure you have an enjoyable and a positive time. National Trails Day is coming up June 4th. And so we've got a lot of hikes going on around the state on the Ice Age Trail. So we're working on a blog post right now and some social media and some press releases to get that information out. So it's a, you know, great opportunity to explore Wisconsin and then the Ice Age Trail. So thank you so much for the invite, and we definitely encourage folks to share their story. We love seeing the photos. We love hearing the journey of the hikers and the folks that are looking to finish the entire trail or just get out for, you know, a morning hike. So we always encourage people to share their story. So thank you, Susan, and I'll turn it over to the next presenter.
Thank you, Amy. It is so exciting to hear about all the opportunities with the Ice Age Trail. All right, let's just move on to Michelle Bacchus. She is with the Wisconsin Bike Fed. as the community engagement manager there. Michelle bikes and walks for transportation. She connects communities through active transportation. And this is 100% true. She loves to share storage and encourage others. Michelle's energy is just infectious. So take it away, Michelle.
Thank you. And thank you for such a nice introduction. I'm really happy to have everybody here today. I saw some familiar names, and I'm sure I'll see your familiar faces very soon. Today, we're going to talk about bike-friendly communities and how we can build a community 2 wheels at a time. Next slide, please. When I'm out biking or when I'm driving and I see people on bikes, it's just magnetic. They're smiling, they're happy, and the most interesting bikes and large groups and fun destinations always have the biggest smiles. So whether it's somebody just biking with their dog to some dog-friendly shops in the local downtown, that'd be me, or a large group. This group in the center here rode, is 3 families. They rode, all those little kids rode like 17 miles, I believe, from Kaukauna to Appleton and then back to go to the grocery store. And then here on the other picture, we have Cycling Without Age. This was at a soup walk in Appleton. It's a downtown event, and these ladies had always wanted to go, but were never able to actually walk that far. So we brought out the Cycling Without Age trishaws and pedaled them right into several buildings to pick up their soup. Next slide, please. So one of the favorite things from my perspective about going by bike is the way that that impacts a community. And I'm not going to read what's on the slide for you. I'll just tell a story while you kind of read it. When I go by bike, I don't have that bubble of steel around me. So when I pass people in places, I hear things, I smell things, I see things, and I'll interact. So if somebody's planting flowers outside, I'll say, wow, and wave to them. Your lawn looks beautiful. Or somebody's doing a cookout, of course, that smells incredible. I have been invited to a lot of cookouts, so that's not a bad thing. But really, it's that sense of belonging and connection that changes 1, 2, 3 people at a time on each ride that each person takes. And pretty soon, it radiates throughout your town. Next slide, please. So if you build it, and when I say it, I mean bike-friendly communities, if you build it, they will come. The graph here I took from the League of American Bicyclists page, and it shows how making changes in your community to make it easier for people to go by bike, to start removing those excuses or reasons why they don't think it's a good idea, encourages them to do so. We can see that the average is it was pretty low. This is an old chart. They didn't have an updated one, but the trends have remained the same. So the US average is pretty low. The non-bike friendly communities are below that. Large cities have a natural public transportation system, so that tends to help. But also the bike-friendly communities. So the bike-friendly communities, those who have been intentional about looking for that low-hanging fruit, the easy changes to make, have really changed the whole sentiment, the whole feeling of their communities. The 5 bike-friendly community areas, they call them the 5 E's, and there's a new one now, are equity, that's the new one, education, encouragement, evaluation, and engineering. So if we go out to the League of American Bicyclists bike-friendly community webpage, we can see these definitions. And I've added in here a few of the, on that back slide, I added in a few of the technical terms. There we go, safe bike routes, parking, and all. So, and the next slide, there we go. I put it in kind of terminology that, what can we do as individuals? What can the person who lives on the corner do? What can the person who lives down the street do? What can we just do when we want to go somewhere or we are going somewhere? For equity, rides and work stands in all neighborhoods, including people intentionally, as James was saying, and making sure that everybody feels welcome. And sometimes that just starts with planning routes through neighborhoods if you're not getting responses to your invitations. Plan on biking through neighborhoods where people you would like to have join you live. Keeping bike parking visible from the destinations. I had a great conversation this morning. Somebody messaged me, Dennis, I think you're on this call, messaged me about bike parking at the local YMCA and looking for some tips and some helpful hints to help them implement something that's going to be used. And just keeping that bike parking visible or under a watchful eye gives people confidence. And that's not hard to do. Just anybody in the community can mention that they'd be interested in it. If they don't think that it's needed, businesses, organizations, communities won't do it. It doesn't even occur to them. So here are a lot of different, I'm sure you've had time to read down them now and we can refer back to them, but a lot of just simple things. Chalking bike education on neighborhood streets. I had the best time during COVID. Nobody says that very often, right? But I had the best time during COVID by drawing these bike education tracks, courses, games on the street in front of my house. And then as families were walking and getting outdoors for exercise, they'd see this on the street and they'd ride through it. And sometimes the parents would do them and they'd do them 3, 4, 5 times. And it was really neat to see the same people come back week after week looking for new drawings. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So we said, if you build it, they will come, but who's they? When people talk about cyclists or bikers, everyone has their own image of what that is. I know the previous presenters also referred to this, but really when it comes to biking, who does benefit from biking? Who does like to bike? It's not always, I do the whole, spandex, hunched over the drop bars and racing through town. Children bike for transportation. Recreational riders. How many people like to go out for dinner or after dinner and just bike around the neighborhood, get their food, to do what it does, and relax before they settle in for the evening? Commuters, whether they're commuting to work, groceries, events, family activities. Retired folks. People still are looking for say activities. They need exercise. They're going to volunteering, socializing, and exploring. These are all things usually done right in the neighborhood and very, very bikeable. Advocates, not just bike advocates. We have advocates for the environment, for health, for equity, for community, for the under-resourced, and parents. Parents are one of the best advocate groups we could get involved with. If we could make things safer and easier for their kids, they'll be behind you. Sports enthusiasts, whether they're out there training for a triathlon or maybe they're just biking to the Little League park or the soccer field with their kids. All people like to have an opportunity to bike. So who else would there be? Let's talk about it later, or you just kind of run through it in your mind. Next time you're out on your bike or next time you see someone at the ice cream shop, how did they get there? Where did they come from? Could they or would they have gone by bike? Next slide, please. So some questions that run through my mind when I see people and I see an opportunity. Who benefits from biking? Who in this area, if we can make this more bikeable, who would benefit from this? The local businesses, the schools, the parks, park and rec folks. And then for each of those groups, what motivates them? And then where can I connect with them? And why will they consider this? What's going to make a difference for them and from their perspective? Okay, next slide, please. So we've got a lot of great examples around the state, and I couldn't narrow this slide down, and I could have changed the font and just gone on forever. But here are some really great examples that I've worked with personally and I'm really, really proud of, and they put some effort into. Menasha, they have routes that just make sense. And they mark them. Sometimes Menasha uses sharrows just to keep marks on the bike routes, so people can follow the sharrows, and it really works. All those roads needed them anyway, and it just makes them more present. If there's an easy change, they implement it. And our brand new trailside teaching safe bicycling signs, they're the first community in Wisconsin, and they're up in Jefferson Park. Fitchburg, oh, advocacy, yeah, hi Steve. Advocacy groups working with local government. There it goes both ways. We have joint advertising, we have joint events, we have done education there at the public library with the advocacy group for the schools. It goes on and on. So there are a lot of great communities here. And if anybody ever needs an example or wants to get connected with a community that's working on a project or that has successfully completed a project that they would like to work on, does that make sense? Then let me know. I'd be happy to connect you. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of great resources. Of course, the Bike Fed, it's the Wisconsin Bike Fed. We're the second largest, or one of the largest, we'll just say, bike and pedestrian advocacy organizations in the entire country. We're membership based, and we have a full-time staff of around 12 people now. We have a lot of great resources on our website for you, but the partners that we have and the other groups out there, we all do this together. And without supporting each other and without your help and the friends that you make, without their help, we're just one group asking for the same thing over and over, and it starts to fall on deaf ears. So there are a lot of great resources. Let's use them all. And if you need links to any of these, Greg, I'm not going to put you on the spot. But if you need links to any of these, if you can't find what you're looking for, we'd love to help connect you with the right people that maybe offer grants or maybe offer assistance. And, all righty, so let's go to the next slide. Well, this is the big grand finale slide. Just ride your bike. Just ride your bike. It doesn't matter if it's 1 block or 2 blocks. Encourage your neighbor to ride their bike. If somebody says, boy, you look like you're having fun on your bike, stop by, have them get their bike out of the garage, ride at their pace with them for a couple blocks, bring them back home safely for a couple blocks, and just do something on your bicycle every time you're out that makes somebody smile. Being our own best advocates is really very encouraging for the whole community. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much, Michelle. I'm trying to turn off my video or turn on my video. Well, this is our final slide for the presentation. Just as a reminder, this is our website, our contact information, and our social media handles. I'm going to stop screen sharing because I realize we're very close to 1 o'clock. But if we have questions, we can take them. I know we have a few people on the Facebook Live, so if you've got a question, you can throw it in the comments there and Greg will find it. I know we are close to wrapping up, but I will just kick things off with just a couple of comments. I loved all this information. It's super inspiring. Back to James' presentation, if people had suggestions, please share those.
Like suggestions on what makes for good invitations, good messaging or
Right.
names, or good suggestions on how to keep groups or rides safe. Those are always looking for good ideas on that vein.
I was just going to comment about that a lot of times I will see chalk marks on sidewalks and trails, and they often are marking like 5K events. Or there's this like mini triathlon that happens here every July 4, and I will see the marks from that. So I think sometimes marking up the street can, if you're allowed, I guess.
And spray chalk is perfectly, and you can do stencils and spray chalk, and that's why we've done the Labor Day Bike Festival a lot. And you can haul out stencils. don't do spray paint. The cities get angry at you if you do too much spray paint.
Although, you know, if it's artful graffiti, I wouldn't tell anyone who did it. Some cities don't allow spray chalk. Okay, well, this also could be a case of ask for permission, or ask for forgiveness, not permission. I also, just regarding the Ice Age Trail, I just wanted to comment that I saw the film Breaking Trail, which is a documentary about Emily, last name is leaving me, but anyway, she's
Ford.
the first, Emily Ford,
Emily
yes.
Ford.
Who she developed this huge Instagram following, which led to the documentary, but she's the first Black woman to through hike the entire Ice Age Trail solo in the winter. It was her and her dog, or her and a borrowed sled dog that eventually became her dog. But the film is incredibly moving. It is really inspiring and just really cool. So if you ever, I will see if I can find a link to share in the notes that go after, but it is called Breaking Trail, and I just put it in the chat. It was at the Banff Film Festival, and there was a screening at the Nelson Institute on campus here in Madison, and it's just fantastic.
It might not be public yet.
Okay.
The actual film company that did that, he is from Stevens Point, or he's from the Wausau Stevens Point area. So not only Emily being in Duluth, the production company is local, and it's Wisconsin, and it's, so it might still be in a few film festivals.
Okay.
But yeah, keep an eye out for it when it does become more available to the audience, the wider audience.
All right. Greg, do you have any questions, or have you found any in the Facebook page?
No, I mean, I have a personal question just about how they became passionate about biking and trail working, and what was like James said, was the ice cream social was the gateway drug to these things. I'm curious if the speakers have a moment or a thing that got them into this passion in the first place, so they can draw it backwards. And I'll go check on Facebook. I haven't seen any comments yet.
I think ice cream sounds like a fantastic motivator for any of it.
Amy, I'm interested in your story. Do you have something?
I completely blame it on my husband. For myself and my husband, outdoor lifestyle, I don't even want to say recreation, but just being outside is really truly a part of our lifestyle. That could be gardening, that could be biking, walking, hiking, kayaking, fishing, just being outside, sitting on our deck, just being outside. And we are believers in public space. I'm a huge supporter in public space, and I truly believe it's not just for a few people, it is for everyone. And so whatever that public space is, if it is a trail, if it is a park, if it is biking, it needs to be accessible and available to everyone. It shouldn't just be for a few folks. So for me, it was we're just always outside. Maybe it's because we don't have cable, I don't know, but we're believers in getting outside, being in nature, and just not overthinking it. So next.
Michelle, do you have a villain origin story?
I was inspired to bike when I was really young. I learned to ride a two-wheel bike because my dad tied my feet to the pedals on those sidewalk bikes, and he just practiced bowling with me. So it was the ride or die situation, James. But my alternative was to ride in the front of his bike in his wire basket. And that is not comfortable. And for some reason, after that, I just loved it. I loved riding my bike. I loved the feeling of riding my bike, the wind in my hair, and I just never stopped. It was don't do that to your kids, though.
I I certainly remember being taken to school in bike seats that would be considered dangerous now. My sort of origin story in becoming more interested in active transportation and looking at it as a research topic really is about the 2008 housing crisis and energy spike. And I made the decision. I was sort of an adult onset recreational cyclist and triathlete, and I made the decision. I was like, well, I think I'll just ride my bicycle to work a few times. And it turned out to be a radicalizing experience to ride your bicycle in American cities. It is sometimes life-threatening and sometimes really life-affirming. And the sort of switching back and forth between those two things made me really wonder if there's better ways to live, and if we could perhaps advocate for better cities and built environments. So I will thank the drivers who told me to get off the road as a radicalizing experience.
Love those stories. Just a note for everyone, in case you're not watching the chat, Michelle asked a question about the Ice Age Trail, which is, it's hard for me to scroll, just asking about the sections that are not complete. Are they comfortable to walk or bike? And then what is the longest section not complete? And Amy put in a link here to the map. I will make sure this goes out in the notes that go with the recording afterwards, as well as on the YouTube description when we post the video. But Amy, if you want to say a little bit about that before we wrap up here.
No, yeah, great question, Michelle. It can get confusing when the trail is not done and you come to the end of a segment and you're like, now what? We have suggested road walks to get from like segment to segment. And when we make those suggestions, safety is our number one concern. It might not be the shortest distance, but it's the safest. If you are looking to become a 1,000-miler, that is what we call those who have finished the entire trail. To become a 1,000-miler, you do need to walk those road walks as well, and walking only. You can bike them, but unfortunately it doesn't count towards the 1,000-miler status. Interesting fun fact, I'll throw this out. A lot of the 1,000-miler wannabes are starting to bike shuttle. We're seeing lots of them. They've all kind of got their own little system, but for the most part, they will park their vehicle at the finish where they're going to stop hiking, and then they will bike to the start where they're going to start. So just depends on how they got to get there, but then they'll secure their bike at the trailhead when they start, and then they hike the segment that they want. So I love that they're combining both. Kind of fun. So I don't know the longest section that is not complete. That's a great question. I don't know that answer. So
sounds like a lot of creative solutions there. I just want to put in one last plug for our e-news. I am always out on the lookout for resources that make any of this more accessible. So in our last newsletter, for example, I found a really great article about like all-terrain wheelchairs that make it possible for people who have to use wheelchairs to get out on actually some pretty rough mountain trails. It's pretty amazing where technology has come. So yeah, really should be for everybody who wants to be outside. I think we should probably wrap it up because we are past 1 o'clock, but thank you again to our presenters, James, Michelle, and Amy. It was wonderful to hear your experiences and the work you've done and all the information you had to share. Thank you all for sticking with us through past 1 o'clock. I'm going to stop the recording now.